good to see everybody. It's good that you guys are here. It's been a morning, and we're going to have a fun time. So, there's a quote that goes on the cell phone. There's a quote that a lot of times brings me to a point of deep introspection, and I think you guys have probably heard it. It's a pretty famous quote. It's misattributed to a lot of people, but if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And so that was a motivational speaker made that quote. And here's the truth: change is hard. It's difficult. But if we're not willing to change, then it's impossible. If we're not willing to deal with that, it becomes impossible. Our lives as believers, our lives as Christians, our lives as Christ followers, is about change. We're being transformed from who we were to that reflection of Christ to the world. Like we even said last week, you might be the only Christ that somebody sees. You're going to be the only Bible that somebody reads. That's who you are. And it's for us. It's about living in this relationship that's focused on the Lord. It's living in this relationship where we have this connection no matter what, and we see this. Now, and we see just Jesus in everything. Now, Jesus told the disciples something. He challenged them, and he said something kind of similar to this quote. It's a little bit different, but it's kind of similar. In John 20:29, he says this. He says, "You believe because you've seen me. Blessed are those who believe that haven't seen me." So we have happiness, we have joy, we have a blessing because we live in faith. The disciples, the people Jesus was talking to, the people that were involved in his ministry, were with him for 3.5 years. They heard his teachings. They heard his words. Now the way we hear his words, the way we hear his teachings, is spending time in the Word. It's spending time in prayer. It's spending time with one another. And that's how we hear those things. You see, our happiness, our joy is a result of belief. It's a result of faith. Now, I think it's a good thing if sometimes we think about that. If we ponder on that, if there's a thing called introspection, if we really evaluate who and where we are. And you know what? Sometimes that's easier said than done because we get stuck in certain places. I was talking to somebody the other day about being stuck in a hamster wheel. They got all this, their heart is really right about a lot of things, but they get stuck about something, and they get in this endless cycle of trying hard and failing and trying hard and failing and trying to fight their way out, but they're scrambling so hard that you can't even step out of the wheel. And sometimes we need to step back and look at life and look at ourselves and see what's going on. Now, I can talk to you about that because here's Rick. And Rick is somebody who really loves routine. I like things in order. I like my steps planned. I like knowing where I'm going. I'm pretty good. Yes, Jenny's over there going, yeah. I try and keep I don't miss appointments. I'm on time. All those things. No, that wasn't about that. Okay? I'm talking about Rick. That's who I am. But yet my days, because of what I do, my days are full of interruptions. My days are full of, I'm going over here, and all of a sudden I get pulled over to something else. I get a call, Rick, I need you to drop what you're doing and go to the hospital. Because somebody needs prayer, somebody needs this, somebody needs to talk. I get people that call me in the middle of the day and just say, help. And that I drop what I'm doing. Now, I may be in the middle of doing some big things, and I tend to get frustrated when that happens. And I've got to check myself. I'm learning, don't get me wrong. I used to get really angry. I used to just blow up, and just stomp off and have a problem. I'm getting better at it, but it's still a process. It's still a learning thing. It's part of my journey. And now the reason I say that is to say that, you know what? Some things are good. Traditions are good, but we can't get stuck in, this is the only way to do things. This is the only way to do things. Way back when my kids were in high school, And I was doing all kinds of things to support their activities. And my youngest son Jacob was going to be in the high school band, and I went to the very first meeting of when he was a freshman, all the band boosters. And I walk in and I realize I know like half the people in there because of my involvement in Little League and other things in the community and stuff. And they're going, "Oh, here, we're going to put him on board right away." And so then I got involved with the board, and I started saying, "Okay, well, let's do this and let's do this." "Oh, we've already done that. We've already tried that. That's not going to work. That's not going to work." Again, it's this mindset that we can't do this or we can't do that. We need to be willing to open our eyes to see something fresh, to see something new, to understand that transformation comes, and that as believers, that's our service to God.
Yes.
Paul wrote to the church in Rome. He said, "Be transformed by the renewing of your minds, that you present yourselves good and acceptable." This is your spiritual service of worship. If we're willing to change, if we're willing to grow, if we're willing to say, "You know what, I don't know it all, and even if I've done something before, maybe I could learn to do it a different way or a better way," that is worship to God. That's honoring God. And here's the truth. We're on a journey. And you know what? There's going to be victories. Anybody had a victory this week? Nobody? No, it's been a rough week, huh? A lot of people have had a rough week. I've talked to a lot of people who have a rough week, but then I talked to my brother in Hawaii who's having a great week. So, maybe it's Hawaii. Maybe that's it. You know what? Even in the difficulties, though, if we can open our eyes, if we can learn to open our eyes, if we can learn to look, there's something that we can take from it. There's some kind of victory we can find. There's some kind of nugget of truth we can grab. And so even in the challenges, there's victories. I really believe that. And here's the thing. We're in process. It's not a destination. Life isn't a destination. It's a journey. And, I want to be one of those people at the end of my journey that goes sliding into the grave going, "Woo, it was a great ride." And there's going to be bumps and bruises and scars. But you know what? It's a journey and it's an adventure, and we need to understand that. And here's what I need to tell you. Here's where I want to encourage you, even in the difficulties. Paul wrote this, and this is a truth about God and who he is. He says, "And I am sure that God, who began the good work within you, will keep right on helping you to grow in grace until this task in you is finally finished on the day that Jesus Christ returns."
Amen.
See, God's going to finish the work. He doesn't fail. He doesn't give up. He doesn't stop. Even when sometimes we stop, even when sometimes we dig in our heels and go, "I'm not going any further. I'm done." God he's patient. He'll wait. He's going to finish the work. Now, the reason I tell you all this, and the reason I'm kind of doing this dance this morning, if you will, is because we can learn a lot from the life of Jesus. You're going, "Duh? That's like a ridiculous statement, Rick." Well, in generality, yes. But what I'm talking about, so many people, and please don't think I'm minimizing this, so many people get caught in these words, in the words of Jesus. And he said this, and he did that. And we want to grab onto these words, and that's all we want to look at. These lessons he taught, these stories he told, and everything else. And in doing that, we don't open our eyes enough to see that in the actions and the things that he chose to do, and the behaviors that he exhibited, there were so many more lessons. There were so many things that taught us how to be who he's purposed us to be, taught us how to live, and taught us how to honor God in the things that we do. I'm not minimizing the words of Jesus. They're wonderful. But his actions, why did Jesus do the things he did? It's really simple. That's not a complicated question. People go, "Oh, well, let's get into all this Christian theory and this religious doctrine and everything else." You know why Jesus did what he did? Because he loved us.
Yes.
That's it. Plain and simple. Everything he did was a result of his love for us. It was a result of him showing us that this relationship that he had with God, we could have with God too. And he wanted us to know that love. He wanted us to know that connection deeply and intimately. Because he had it. And he lived it out every day. And he's telling us by him doing that we could do the same thing. But here's the problem. Excuse me, Barney. I'll walk off screen for a second. Here's the problem for most people today. I give you a word. There's going to go, nah, or some people go, he caught me. Fear. Too many people live in fear today. You know that? We live in fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of fill in the blank. I can't because I'm scared. I can't because I'm incapable. You know what? I really believe this. The reason people live in fear is because they're unwilling to stay focused on Jesus. Jesus never said be perfect. But he said, if you keep your mind set on me, I'll make everything straight. I'll make everything right. But we're in such a rush. When I was in the service, if I wanted to hear from home, because it was really difficult, we all didn't have cell phones in our pockets. It was really difficult to make a phone call home. So if I wanted to hear from home, I'd write a letter. And so to sit down and write a letter took a little while. You write a letter, and then you put it in an envelope, and you address it, and stick a stamp on it, and take it to the post box. And I was overseas. I was over in Japan. I was over in Okinawa. And you put this thing in the mail, and it would take 2 weeks to get here. Okay? And then Mom or my brother or whoever my latest girlfriend was would get this letter, and they'd sit down and they'd write a letter back. And it would take 2 weeks to get back. So you're dealing with things there's a whole month lapse in a time frame. Now we're upset if our computer doesn't boot up in 30 seconds. Now we're frustrated because we can't get on the internet, and we hit this buffering with this thing called buffering. Everybody knows what buffering is. And it's because it's put our YouTube video on hold for a minute. We're frustrated for the wrong things. We've got this society where it's a microwave society. We want to push a couple buttons and want everything to be there, right there and now. And that's, you know what? I understand that's the culture today, but that's not the way God works sometimes. Sometimes we have to understand that we're in this process and that it takes some time. And if we're willing to be patient, because God's patient with us, we're going to get to the place that he wants us to be. Now, probably the first real musician, the first musical act that I really, as a young teenager, fell in love with because I really liked him was Andre Crouch. Andre Crouch and the Disciples. Now, you guys probably never even heard of him, and that's okay. But yeah, Andre, yes, he's awesome. And it's because we just listened to Christian music. We listened to Christian cassettes. We didn't have records, we had cassettes. There was no CDs, and we couldn't afford an 8-track player. So we would get the 99-cent cassettes, and I listened to a lot of him. There's a song that Andre sang back in 1971. Okay, I'm dating myself here. But back in 1971, it says, I've got confidence. God is going to see me through. No matter what the case may be, I know he's going to fix it for me. Now, a lot of the people sang that song too. But it's this song that says, you know what? I know that God's intention for me is his best. Not my best, but his best. And he's going to see me through. He's going to be there. He's going to walk with me. And you know what? That song is just a reflection of some things it says in Scripture. I think, yeah, you're right there. See? You're on it. You're on it. 1 John 4:18 says, it's about perfect love. There's no room in love for fear. Well-formed love banishes fear, since fear is crippling. A fearful life, a fear of death, a fear of judgment is not one yet fully formed in love. Proverbs 14:26 tells us this: those who fear the Lord, who are in awe of him, who reverence him, who respect him, those who fear the Lord are secure. He will be a refuge for their children. 1 Peter 2:9, for your chosen people, a royal nation, a holy people, a people of God's own possession. You were chosen to tell about the wonderful acts of God. Ephesians 2:10. Man, I love this verse. Don't you guys love that verse? Do you know it? It says that you're at home. You're God's masterpiece. For we are his workmanship. The word workmanship, that everybody translates workmanship. The Greek word is poema. It's a word that means a poem. And it doesn't just mean a poem, but it means this beautiful, this masterpiece that was written. We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works which God prepared for you to do. That means you have something to do. And God's prepared you. He's in the process of preparing you. So I want you to know something. All this stuff that's going on, all this stuff I've talked about, getting distracted and struggling with routine and struggling with life and being fearful and everything else, I want you to know this, there's hope. I want to encourage you that you're not finished yet. God's not finished with you. If he was finished with you, you wouldn't be sitting here. You wouldn't be watching. If he was finished with you, you'd be done. It'd be over. So you're in process, and that's a really cool thing. So that means when the storm comes, when the difficulty comes, when you're not feeling good, when you're tired and worn out, when you're beat up, God's got something in store for you. And there's a treasure to be found. We have no reason to fear. Life is going to happen. God's love is there to guide us. It's there for us. And here's this. Here's the truth. God has prepared you. All of you. Prepared Zyla for something. She's just in a different place in her journey than we are. And the cool thing is we get to walk together. We get to do this together. We have people we can lean on, people that we can support. We have people that throw out reminders, like songs. Like you said today, Oceans. That reminds you, yes. It's a message because it's a reminder. And that's the way God deals with us, and that's the way he talks to us, and that's the way he reminds us, and that's the way he shows us that he cares about us. But here's the thing. Okay, I'm talking about our lives now, but we're going on this journey through Mark to look at the life of Jesus, because I don't want to sound sacrilegious here, but you can live just like Jesus lived. I'm not saying you're God. Don't hear that. But you can live like Jesus lived. In confidence, in joy, in understanding that your steps are ordered, in understanding that you're protected, in understanding that God's got you, and he's going to take care of you. And then all those things that you're facing, all those things that are crushing down on you, all of those hard times that are coming, God, you know that God's got those. You know that he's going to take care of those. And you can be confident in the fact that, you know what, you're here for a purpose, and God's going to accomplish that purpose. See, God's prepared you for something. And it's wonderful. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be amazing. And you know what? We get to learn how to face it by looking at the actions of Jesus. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, as we've been going through, we're still in the first chapter of Mark, but as we've been going through that, you remember how I talked about last week how Jesus was ministering and how he was calling the disciples. And he went on and he was preaching, and they were traveling around Capernaum, and things were going on. And you know what? The word of Jesus was spreading all over the place. Now, we talked today about the word spreading, and it's because we're getting news, instantaneous news, on our phones from things that are going on the other side of the world. Jesus walked around Galilee, northern part of Israel. It's about a 64 square mile area. But that's where everything was happening. And news about him was traveling fast. Jesus began a ministry that was very active. Things were happening. He was preaching, he was healing, demons were being cast out. And here's the thing. After he came back from being tempted, remember we talked about that last week, he was in the wilderness, he was tempted. Man, things just started happening right away. There was a time of, wow, man, you went through this, you need to go rest. You need to go. The message was getting out because he understood his mission. He understood that he was on a time frame. And so they were preaching that Jesus would always go to the synagogue to preach and to teach. I'm falling apart here. Sorry. Mic fell off.
You're good.
I'm good. So, and anyway, after a time there was a time that they were in the synagogues and they were going around and he was preaching and he was teaching and he was healing people. Miracles were happening. And Peter, who was one of the disciples, right? Second disciple it was called. Andrew was the first, his brother. He went and got his brother Simon Peter. Peter says, hey, all you guys, my fisherman buddies, let's go to my house. Oh, and Lord, you can come too. Okay? He's bringing everybody over to his house. They're going to have a meal. They're going to do whatever. It doesn't say the reason. We know in just a second what the reason is. But it doesn't say why, but they're going to Jesus' house. Now, there's a great point here. There's a great lesson for us to learn. People come to church on Sundays, right? We come into this building, and you hear a lot of people walk out and they're smiling, they're happy. Oh, I had this great encounter with God. The problem is they left him on the doorstep as they walked out to church. See, we got to take God with us wherever we go. He goes with us. He wants to be invited along. Hey, come ride with me. Come to my house. Jesus, come along. I need you with me. And that's what Peter was saying. Now they got to Peter's house, and there was something that needed to happen. So let me read to you what happened. In Mark 1:29 is where we're going to start. We're going to jump through the rest of the chapter. As soon as they left the synagogue, they went into Simon and Andrew's house with James and John. Simon's mother-in-law was lying in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. So he went to her, took her by the hand, and raised her up. The fever left her, and she began to serve them. When the evening came after the sun had set, they brought to him all those who were sick and demon-possessed. The whole town assembled at the door. And he healed many who were sick with various diseases and drove out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. So here we have this encounter. Jesus, remember what I told you, the kind of my theory of the book of Mark is. If there's an encounter with the Lord, brings an immediate result. Jesus is invited to Simon, Peter, and Andrew's house. Peter's mother-in-law is sick. What did Jesus do? Oh, she's sick. Let me put on my surgical mask and be sure that I'm washed up because I don't want to get any germs on me. No, Jesus saw a need. He saw a practical need, and what did he do? He met the need. He was moved with compassion. And I got to tell you, I know that there's a lot of needs out there, guys. I know, family, there's a lot of needs out there, and sometimes they can almost be overwhelming. But we can't get hard-hearted about needs. We have to be sensitive to the needs. Now, some people are out there trying to take advantage. Don't get me wrong. I talk to people all the time that, I can't give money to somebody standing on the side of the road because, they're going to go buy alcohol, they're going to buy drugs, they're going to buy cigarettes. If God puts it on your heart to give money to somebody, give the money. Because if you don't do that, you're in sin. It's not that person's in sin. It doesn't matter if they're going to buy a beer. What matters is that you're responding to what God's put on your heart. And Jesus saw this need. He was moved with compassion. He met the need, and he met it in a real way. What did he do? I'll pray for you. Let me pray for you over here in the other room. No, he went to her and he took her by the hand. He showed her real love. He showed her compassion. And what happened? Scripture says she was healed. Now, I don't know about you, but there's been a couple times in my life that I've had a really bad fever. Fever which has laid me up in bed. And after the fever broke, the last thing I wanted to do was get up and start serving people and making dinner and washing people's feet and all those things. That's the last thing. By then I just exhausted. She got up and says she served right away. She started serving the men that were there. She started serving the Lord. Doesn't say what she was doing, but I venture to say that they came to eat. They were hungry. They were tired. She probably was there doing all those things. Just from this encounter with the Lord, there was an immediate result. An act of service. Can I tell you this? we play these great songs, and we got a great choir here because we listen to all the recorded stuff, so it's really cool. But we think worship is this music, and we raise our hands and we clap and we sing along. An act of service is a demonstration of worship. An act of service is a demonstration of worship. Serving somebody else and doing it, just to want to help them, to want to meet that need in a real way, that doesn't honor you, it honors the Lord. And we need to understand that we're doing, whatever you do in word or deed, you do unto the Lord. And you're grateful that you have the opportunity to do it. So, and here's the thing. Jesus ministered to the mother-in-law. That's what it says. He ministered to the mother-in-law. She got up to serve. What's the next thing that we read? All the neighbors found out about it. And they were dragging all kinds of people and filling up the house with all kinds of sick people. Now today we might say, oh man, I got to stay away from that stuff. No, Jesus, he ministered. He continued to serve right there. So it isn't about his words, it's about his actions. It's about him showing kindness and compassion in a difficult time for people in difficult situations. That's something we can learn from. Now, can I tell you something? Can I tell you a secret? It's probably a secret, because you guys have been around me, and I watch you guys live and do these things too. But ministry, serving others, it can wear you out. Yes. It can flat out wear you out. It's the truth. We need strength and support. Where does that strength and support come from? It comes from God, but it comes in the context of this. From relationships, from being able to lean on somebody else when times get hard, to be there, to be supported, to know that you can go and got to unload that burden that's on that you're carrying on your shoulders, and there's somebody there to hear you and to listen to you, and maybe give you just a little bit of hope. Jesus worked on his relationships, and the next passage we find in Mark, right after this ministry, right after this time of ministry, is the very next morning. And what Jesus is doing is he's working on his relationship. Now, he's not waking all the disciples up and saying, hey, let's go get a cup of coffee. What did Jesus do? Before the dawn had even broke, he got up. In verse 35, it says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he got up, went out, and made his way to a deserted place. And there he was praying. Simon and his companions searched for him. When they found him, they said, everyone is looking for you. And he said to them, let's go out to the neighboring villages so that I may preach there too. This is why I've come. So what was Jesus doing? He went out to get along with God. He went out to work on that relationship. If you get this relationship in balance, all those other relationships that you have are going to find balance. I guarantee that. I guarantee that. Jesus got up early. He sacrificed sleep. Do you think he was probably physically tired? Probably. He sacrificed sleep and got out to go talk to God. That was important. Prayer was a priority with Jesus. It was important with him. It was important to him to spend time alone with God. Now, I got to tell you, that's something we can learn. Too often we get all hung up about that prayer thing. I don't want to pray in public. I pray privately. I pray privately. I pray, it's between me and God. And that's good, don't get me wrong. But let me ask you a question. We read this passage. How do you think that Peter and the disciples found Jesus? If somebody's going to a deserted place, if you don't want to be found, you're not going to get found. If you want to get alone, you can get alone. I mean, even here in this day and age, I can go somewhere and hide. I can go somewhere and say, I don't want to be bothered, and nobody will even know me or see me. So how do you think they found him? They probably heard him pray. So Jesus wasn't. He was talking to God. And he was probably having a conversation, and there was probably worship and praise, and they probably heard him. And that's how they were able to find him. We have to be willing to open our mouths, open our voice. Now, I got to tell you, sometimes I stumble over my words. I stumble over things, and I have this thing where I'm trying to tell you guys something, and I'm messing it all up. There's times as I get done with the message, and I go and I either replay it in my mind or I'm listening to it again. I'm going, Rick, come on. You can do better than that. But here's the thing. God is the one that's speaking to each and every heart. God is the one who's communicating to you guys. The reason I know that is because I know, and I'm not saying it has happened here, I imagine it will eventually, but there's other times where I've been in a church and I've preached, and I've been very passionate about this message, and at the end of the message, when I'm back talking to people, they're coming back and shaking my hand and going, oh, that was a great message, and all this, and thank you, and you know what, I was really inspired when you said this. And I'm thinking in my mind, I never said that. I never said that at all, but that's God. The way he's communicating through the Holy Spirit, he's communicating to us, helping us deal with things. They heard Jesus long before they encountered him. Our prayer, our worship isn't just meant to be 30 minutes every Sunday. That's not enough. We need to be communicating with the Lord. Here's the thing, and I wrote this in your bulletin because, and the reason I did this is because it's something that I changed. Growing up, I had this little tiny wood plaque on my wall. Had it for years. It said, prayer changes things. It was given to me. I got that when I was in 5th or 6th grade at the Bible camp at church, the weekly thing. It's one of those things that I just got, and I kept on my wall. Prayer changes things. And I want to grab onto that and say prayer changes things, and I don't want to minimize that. But you know what prayer changes most of all? Me. Me. Changes my attitude about the circumstances. It changes my attitude about situations. That's what prayer changes. It helps me see that God's got a plan. So, Jesus, in his time in his time of prayer, it prepared him to minister, to preach, and to serve. He worked on this relationship so that he could go out and do the things that he did. Another lesson for us to learn about what Jesus did, not just what he said. Mm-hmm. Now, in the last section in this first chapter, Mark, I'm not going to read it to you because it's a little bit longer, but it records an encounter that Jesus had. There's many things he was preaching all over the place, but it records this very specific encounter of a leper who was cleansed. And it talks about that. And now there's so many lessons that are in this first chapter of Mark. But I want to tell you that Jesus was out ministering, and he had these specific encounters, and yet he didn't tell people, look, I healed you, you're cool. He told people to follow go back and follow their traditions to make sure that everybody else knew that they were made whole. Go back to what would happen with leprosy. See, if somebody got leprosy, they would have to go to the rabbi, and the rabbi would have to declare them clean. And Jesus told them that, because that was from the law of Moses. But Jesus told them, you know what? Whatever you do, let's make sure that it's done the right way. See, there's a lot of lessons here in this first chapter. The first lesson, the biggest lesson that I could tell you in this first chapter, Mark, is this, is Jesus came to serve. He chose every day to demonstrate love and grace in a real way. He chose to serve. It's something we can take to heart. It was a daily action, a daily choice to show grace. Can I tell you something? Or is it right here? Oh, I kind of paraphrased it. Believers are never more like Jesus than when they're serving. Believers are never more like Jesus than when they're serving somebody else. You want to be Christ-like, serve somebody. You want to be Christ-like, show grace. See, and here's the really cool thing. If we're willing to serve, God will share all his authority. He will share everything he has with you to make sure that message goes out. If we're willing to put our fears aside, to step out in faith, God's going to make something happen. You're not, but God is. And you're just the conduit. And the cool thing is you get the blessing. Learning to love, learning to serve, learning to demonstrate grace allows us to see miracles. You want to know why we're not seeing miracles in the United States today? Because it's all about me. Because it's all about me. Let me get another selfie. Here, while I'm praying for this person, let me be sure that I got my selfie stick going. All right? Let's get this on YouTube. It's all about me. No, it's not. When it's about him, big things happen. And you know what? Then you don't have to say a thing if the word goes out. And what happens is when miracles start to happen, people flock to the miracles because they want to know why and they want to know how. And they get this encounter with the Lord. So if we're willing to step out, put our fears aside, to take a risk, big things are going to happen. But here's the thing we need to know. If you're going to serve, you better be willing to be compassionate. Oh, I'm serving. Look, I'm packing up all this food for all these great people. Look at me. No. I'm praying. If I'm helping at a place that's packing food, I'm praying for the people that are going to receive the food. And we've done different things to ship stuff off or to do things. I want to just communicate love and grace. Let me wrap up here because I've probably already gone over. Yeah, I'm way over. I'm sorry. I got wound up, I guess. I walk early in the mornings. It's quite a different culture early in the mornings. I mean, before dawn. It's a different culture out there. In fact, I had an encounter this morning that was really scary. I had a coyote chase me down. Yeah. I've never seen a coyote that aggressive. So, but when I'm walking around, animals are around, the birds are waking up, you're starting to see different things. But you see, the other thing is you see people. People walking, people riding their bikes, people running. And you know what most of the people are doing? They're not out there exercising, looking at enjoying nature, enjoying this thing God's created. They're either texting or they're on their phone. And I find it really remarkable to see people going down a bike path at top speed with their phone up to their ear. And I don't know how they do it. But that just says we want to be connected. Now, my time in the morning is kind of that time where I get to talk to God and I get to listen to him. That's one of those times that I've just set aside to do that. And it's a really cool thing. I enjoy those moments because they're part of my routine. And it's part of my alone time, and that's important. We need to understand that setting aside time for God to communicate is important. And it reminds us of this one thing. You want to hit that last slide? It's a verse I used earlier. Perfect love. We get reminded of that when we set aside that time. And it moves everything else aside. What I've learned so far, since we've started this part of our journey together, is that this one thing. And I like to think sometimes I'm pretty good at it, but I'm learning all the time, is we need to get better at relationships. Get better at this relationship, these relationships. We need to get better at it. Because there are people out there that need them desperately. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for your understanding. I thank you for your guidance. I thank you for the fact that we're in process and you're walking with us. Today was kind of one of those mornings where we unraveled a little bit, and I just ask you to bring us back together, Father, and just be there to encourage us and guide us and help us uncover your truth. Help us learn to live that. May the love of God bring you the strength and encouragement you need each day. May you find joy as you take the steps to serve and minister to others. And may God's blessing go with you with every step that you take. Family, grace first, grace always. Live simple, live practical, love eternal. Thank you for being patient with us. Love you guys. Have a great week. See you next week.